Hi, everybody. Welcome back to MyFIntelligence. Today I'm here with my partner, Kat.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a very, very special guest today. I'm here with Mr. Heldman, who is a Rotman alum, and he has had a very interesting career path. Thank you so much for being with us today. And could you give us a little bit of an introduction, Theo, as to your career path and all the wonderful things that you've been doing?
Well, thank you for that introduction. In terms of my career path, I guess it's been more of a journey than a destination. I've sort of wandered into each one of my roles, not necessarily with the predisposition of wanting to complete something, but really more of a learning process than anything else. And it started fairly early. I mean, I always wanted to go into architecture, and I started in architecture actually, and realized that wasn't really a field that I wanted to pursue, and business was a fallback option. So I did then joined Rotman, did my Bachelor of Commerce, and then went into industry. And industry was interesting because it was a little bit daunting to try and figure out what you wanted to do after graduating. I joined an accounting practice, did my CPA, and then went into industry and had a number of different roles, again, all with the prospect of learning new things. So I started in treasury, then moved to corporate finance, product development, operations, CFO of the funds, and then finally strategy. So it's all been a very good and exciting process.
Wow, that really does sound like a journey, and it's so cool how you've done so many different things. So I guess maybe we can start at the beginning. And can you tell us what drew you to accounting in the first place?
It's a great question. I'm not sure I was drawn to accounting as much as it was I was given advice to go into accounting. I actually, when I finished my Bachelor of Commerce, I didn't have a lot of accounting courses. And a lot of my peers ended up working for banks, and I wanted to do something different and didn't really know where I wanted to end up. So a friend of mine, my mentor actually, had suggested I do my CPA and join an accounting firm. And basically you get to audit a number of different organizations, check out a couple of different cultures, the way organizations are managed, different industries. And it's sort of similar to what you do as an undergraduate, right? You might want to audit a course, so you sit in on a couple of things, meet the professor, understand what's going on in that course, and then decide whether you want to take it or not. The accounting practice really allowed me to do that, and I got the ability to see a number of different organizations and find one that actually spoke to me, which one did, a financial services company, and I ended up there.
That's really interesting. And what really stood out to me when I first spoke with you is, I guess in a lot of commerce programs, banking is really huge. Everyone's really pushed towards that direction. And what really inspired you to kind of not go in that direction and have this fully different point of view and pursue that?
I guess, honestly, it was the first couple of experiences I had. When I joined Ernst Young in their audit practice, and one of my clients was a large major bank, and we were transitioning their back office, and it was a job that was controlled out of New York, and so there were a lot of heavy partner activity in New York. Amazing people, had a ton of knowledge, and all in investment banking. And I really got to understand how they operated, how they managed their clients, because I sat in on a lot of these meetings, not more than anything else just to learn. I mean, I was an observer more than anything else. I certainly wasn't providing any advice. But I really got to understand what it takes to be successful in that field. And it didn't really speak to me. You want to sort of be the showman. And I really liked being the number two guy. I wanted to get things done in the background as opposed to necessarily being put up front. And so I learned early on that that's something that I like to do that made me successful.
So after your time at Ernst Young in consulting, can you tell us about what your next step was after that?
I joined their international practice and had a number of different clients, mostly in Canada. My only financial services company was a company called Trimark, and they were founded by two individuals who had been really steeped in financial services practice for a very long time. and ran the organization like a family business. I mean, when I joined the organization, I think I was probably the 120th employee, so it was still fairly small. And the founders would walk through the organization and chat with the staff. And I loved that atmosphere. And when I audited them and then finally consulted to them, I thought, wow, this is an organization I'd really like to join. I like the culture. I like the people. It was a growing business. It really didn't have any downside. And one day they asked me to join them. And it was very easy to say yes. And that was my first foray into leaving Ernst Young, another great company. I mean, I loved my time there, but it was really time for me to move on and try something out on my own. And Trimark was that opportunity, so I took it.
How did you make that shift from an accounting role to a, I guess, strategy consulting role? And what were some of these transferable skills that you developed?
I think a lot of it was just learning along the way. Something that spoke to me was taking every opportunity that you had. Didn't really matter what the role was, but as long as you left it in a better position than when you started with it, that was always something that I aspired to. Could you make it a better place? Could you make it a better process? Could you train the people so that you've got a stronger staff, for instance? That was always my goal. So learning along the way was definitely big for me. Helping organizations grow, and that was something that I learned quickly about myself in the consulting practice. I really liked the idea of helping people do things better, helping them grow, helping organizations grow, and I've just kept that going throughout my career.
Having had experience in both mature established companies as well as relatively small growing companies, can you tell us a bit about the difference in the pace of work, the environment, and just in general, any large differences that you notice in these two different work environments?
If you're in a small operation, you're pretty much called to task to do pretty much anything that needs doing. If you're in a large organization, there's generally somebody who has the accountability or responsibility for particular areas. If you want to get something done, it's generally the skills that you need are working with people or through people to get things done, and sort of prioritizing and collaborating with them, really. A lot of that goes on in small businesses too, obviously, but at the end of the day, there's no one to delegate it to. So sometimes you sort of have to roll up your sleeves and do it yourself.
I kind of want to zero in on your corporate finance role that you had at Invesco.
Yep.
Could you tell us a bit more about that and what the position actually entailed? And who was your team and what did you exactly do?
Probably all started when I joined Trimark the first time. They had just gone public and they were building out their treasury operations. So generally when you're in the financial services business, there's always going to be money coming in and out and transitioning hands, not client money, but operational money. And so they needed a treasury operations, which they didn't really have at the time. And so I came on board to help build that out. The corporate finance role would relate to managing shareholder expectations, voting rights, if there was an outstanding line of credit or debt, that was something else that you sort of needed to manage as well. And then the day-to-day operations of funding, the operational services. I mean, there's certain triggers and regulatory protocols that you need to have in place in a financial services organization. And so that was the responsibility as well. Another large part of it in this particular role was just helping out with the annual budget for the entire organization. And that was really interesting to me because you got a chance to work with all the other departments within the organization. I wasn't leading it by any stretch of the imagination, but I was assisting in helping roll out the budget process. One day I was asked to help the product group do some analytical models on some new products. And that's kind of how I migrated into the product development role. Not really a corporate finance role, but there wasn't anybody else around to do the modeling for the product team. So it sort of fell on me. But really at the end of the day, it was the analytical backstop that I had learned. And that started way back in Rotman Commerce as well. But the analytical tools that you pick up and understanding the business through the budget process helped, I think, immensely. And then that led to some really good work that was done in the product development team.
I'm really amazed at just how many different things you were doing throughout your career, especially in the early years, it seems. So can you tell us a bit about how you picked up some of these skills to do these treasury operations, and then later on how you also developed these really good analytical skills apart from what you learned at Rotman?
You don't learn these things without making mistakes. And when you do mistakes, you really learn a lot about what not to do. And hopefully you learn from your mistakes and you don't make the same mistake twice. And you also learn by asking questions about how to avoid risk. And you literally sit down, you have a coffee with maybe somebody who ran the division previously, or your boss, or the CFO of the company. I mean, there's lots of people that you can connect with to understand how the business really operates. And you take that away with you and you build those into your models. I think it's different now when you've got AI tools and robotics, and you can kind of pivot through a number of different scenarios fairly easily. But at the time, keeping it simple and keeping it focused on your primary objective, that was key. And trying to avoid all the bells and whistles was really important. But really along the way, it's asking questions, taking those answers back, and trying to take what's a business concept and bringing that back into your analytical model, and then having it vetted by whether it's your boss or a peer, and then making a fine adjustment and then having them review it again. When you're asked to make another model for a different purpose the next time, you just take those learnings and you incorporate them again. And then most of those kinds of learnings are life learnings as well. And so they help you in a lot of different areas, like being prepared. If you go into a meeting to produce a model and show somebody how the model works, go through a couple of iterations, have it peer reviewed, do a mock presentation in front of your friends and have them ask questions, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you're prepared, it's going to make your final presentation that much better. So a lot of it is life lessons too.
This is the end of part 1 of our interview with Mr. Heldman. We've learned so much from you, and I'm sure everyone watching has as well. If you'd like to keep watching and see the other questions that Sam and I asked him and all the wonderful insights he gave us, please head on over to part 2, which will be up on our website.